Hey guys, tonight we drift far from buzzing phones, blinking screens, and the chaos of modern clocks. Instead, you find yourself under a velvet black sky in ancient Egypt. The stars above you shine like powdered gold flung across silk. Below, the Nile slithers silently through the dark, its slow ripples catching flickers of starlight. The air is warm but not heavy, humming softly with insects and the distant hoot of some bird that probably thinks it's scarier than it is. You're standing on a dirt path that cuts through the sleepy city of Memphis, not the one with guitars and barbecue, but the ancient capital of a civilization obsessed with balance, beauty, and doing things properly for all eternity. Buildings of mud brick line the horizon like quiet guardians, and temple spires loom ahead, whispering stories older than most mountains. A breeze carries the scent of lotus, baked grain, and something distinctly animal. You're not sure if it's goat, crocodile, or divine bovine, and frankly, you're too relaxed to care. A temple guard squints at you through the gloom, then decides you're probably harmless, just another dreamer drifting through the warm haze of night. You pass under a stone archway where hieroglyphs dance in your periphery, shaped like owls, arms, and sacred bread loaves. Somewhere nearby, incense is burning. A sleepy swirl of myrrh and crushed resin trailing into the stars. And just when you start to wonder how ancient people knew what time it even was in this kind of darkness, a gong sounds, a low bronze moan that vibrates in your chest. It's not time to wake up or go to bed. It's time to count the stars. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge softly through the temple grounds, where priests in linen robes move like whispers. The high priest of Ra is already at the observatory tower, peering eastward. He's waiting for Sopdet, the star we call Sirius, to rise just before the dawn. Every year, its shimmering reappearance above the horizon marks the start of a new year, right before the Nile floods and life begins again in a moist, muddy miracle. It's not an accident. The Egyptians don't leave time to fate, they build it into the architecture of their religion, their farming, and even their fashion choices. Time tells you when to plant onions, when to mourn a god, and when to not wear wool unless you want to offend a deity with an oddly specific allergy. Historians still argue whether this obsession with time came from practical necessity, agriculture's demands, or whether it was spiritual from the start. What's certain is that in this moment, standing there among carved columns and half-awake cats, you feel the weight of time differently. Slower. Deeper. More intentional. The stars above aren't just pretty, they're clocks. The temples are calendars. And soon, someone will decide it's officially New Year's Day because a distant spark of starlight just blinked over the horizon. You follow the procession as the priests carry offerings to mark the occasion, loaves of bread shaped like eyes, jugs of wine sealed with wax, and a small pyramid of onions. Because nothing says, Happy New Year, like sacred root vegetables. There's no confetti. No countdown. Just a soft chant in the old tongue, praising the rebirth of time itself. It's oddly soothing. Almost hypnotic. Even the crocodiles in the temple pool seem to blink more slowly. As dawn peels itself open over the eastern horizon, the sky softens from obsidian to peach. The chant fades. The priest lowers his arms. Somewhere nearby, a scribe makes a faint mark on a sheet of papyrus. A single line. A tiny tick in the great ledger of time. And just like that, the new year begins, according to the stars, the Nile, and the man with the biggest hat in town. It's quiet. Peaceful. Almost boring in the most delightful way. And as the city slowly wakes up, donkey carts groaning to life, sandals slapping dusty streets, you begin to sense how powerful this whole star-watching tradition is. It's not about celebrating with fireworks or resolutions. It's about order. Stability. The comfort of knowing that time itself can be measured, predicted. Even celebrated with a whisper instead of a bang. Of course, there's no weekend ahead to relax and recover. You'll learn soon enough, Egyptians didn't do weekends. But we'll get to that. For now, just let the warmth of the morning sun soak into your shoulders, and the slow turning of the ancient sky remind you, you are part of something very, very old. You shuffle into the cool shade of the temple's inner court, where the walls are covered in neat, geometric rows of hieroglyphs, some glowing faintly as dawn light slips through the high slits in the stone. The air smells of papyrus, ash, and something sweet you can't quite place. Honey, maybe. Or whatever bees wore as perfume 3,000 years ago. Ahead of you, several scribes sit cross-legged in their linen wraps, surrounded by open scrolls, reed pens, and what can only be described as smug expressions. These men are time's librarians, the watchers of the stars and recorders of days. And right now, they're arguing, gently, over fractions. You sidle closer. One is pointing skyward, gesturing with a piece of charcoal toward the faint afterglow of Sopdet, that all-important star. It rose precisely one finger above the horizon, he says. Tapping his own index for effect, at the moment the ibis called. The second scribe snorts, amused. The ibis is late. It always is. The real sign was the shimmer in the river mist. Ask the temple cat, she saw it. The cat, resting regally on a folded tunic nearby, offers no comment. This is how ancient Egyptians track time, not by minutes or even hours, but by watching the sky and its patterns like a patient lover waiting for a wink. The heliacal rising of Sopdet was the grandest cue of all, marking not only the new year but the impending flood of the Nile, that life-giving chaos no one could afford to miss. The scribes, precise as ever, had divided the year into 12 months, each 30 days long. Neat. Organized. Very satisfying. But of course, that only gave you 360 days. So what did they do? They shrugged, and tossed in 5 bonus days at the end of the year. Epigomenal days, they called them. These were not normal calendar days. They were weird, in between, slightly cursed but also deeply sacred. Days when gods were born, rules were loosened. And everyone quietly agreed not to take anything too seriously. Historians still argue whether these 5 days were used for extra work or sneaky naps. You personally suspect naps. In any case, the Egyptian calendar was strikingly close to what we use today, 365 days in a solar cycle. This was centuries before Julius Caesar would strut in with his leap year smugness. The Egyptians were already counting their days with celestial accuracy, even if their version of weekend was, well, non-existent. One of the scribes looks up and nods toward you. You're new, he says. Want to help count? You nod cautiously. He hands you a chart. It's dense, full of symbols for days, stars, deities, and a suspicious number of ducks. The scribes are trying to predict not just when the next flood will arrive, but when to schedule the most important festivals. Because if the Nile floods before the festival of Happy, it's rude. If it floods after, it's worse, embarrassing, like showing up late to a party hosted by your boss/sun god. So every morning, before the rest of the city stirs, the scribes measure. They count fingers on the horizon. They note bird calls. They ask cats, jokingly, but also, not jokingly. You join in the ritual, pointing your finger at the sky as the sun edges upward. There, says the older scribe. See how it touches the edge of the temple roof? That's how we know it's time to mark another day. It's not exact in the way modern watches tick, but it's consistent enough to organize one of the most advanced civilizations of its time. The Egyptians used this calendar to schedule everything, from planting crops to embalming pharaohs to reminding people which god to wear on their necklace that month. You watch as a young apprentice scribbles today's date into a fresh scroll. The ink smells of soot and oil. He adds the deity of the day, this time it's Thoth, god of wisdom and moonlight. A good day for decisions, the apprentice says with a wink. Or naps. Again with the naps. These people really knew something. But the deeper you get into their counting system, the more you start to notice what's not there. There's no 7-day week. There are no weekends. There are no Mondays to hate, no Fridays to crave, and certainly no Taco Tuesdays. The Egyptians had months, yes, and days, but nothing resembling the regular cycle of work-rest we cling to like a lifeboat today. Why? Well, historians still argue about that, too. Some believe the constant rhythm of temple life, with its own intricate schedule of rituals, was the week. Others suggest that the agricultural calendar left no space for weekly pauses. You rested when the Nile said so. Not a moment sooner. And then there's the theory that weekends just weren't a thing people needed in a world where the divine and the daily were so tightly woven together. When your work is worship, maybe a break feels unnecessary. Or maybe the priests just didn't believe in Saturdays. Either way, you're beginning to realize that the ancient Egyptian life had its own kind of flow, one where time felt more like a circle than a line. The scribes pack up their scrolls as the sun fully breaks over the temple walls. One of them stretches and yawns. A good start to the year, he says. Let's hope the cows agree. You chuckle softly. The cows always have the final word. The streets of Memphis are waking slowly now, though street might be generous. They're more like sand-packed lanes edged by flat-roofed homes the color of baked bread. You stroll with the scribes as they leave the temple. Their scrolls tucked under one arm and their sandals flapping lazily with every step. Around you, the city yawns into motion. A fishmonger pushes his cart, muttering to himself about catfish and price inflation. A woman dumps a pot of wash water into the gutter with the practiced grace of someone who's done it every morning for 30 years. A child chases a goose, and the goose, as geese do, takes it personally. You pass a family seated outside their home, already eating a simple breakfast, bread, figs. A little beer that's more porridge than pint. You want some, the father asks, holding up a steaming cup. You accept, if only for the ritual. It's thick, yeasty, warm. And tastes like it was strained through a barley field wearing yesterday's socks. Somehow, not bad. Overhead, the sun climbs fast. No snooze buttons here. The city runs on light and shadow. On the angle of beams through doorways and the length of your own feet stretching across the street. You're learning to read time the way Egyptians did, by where it feels like in the day. Morning has a golden hush. Noon is sharp and silent. Afternoon buzzes with flies and gossip. But again, you notice something. No one's talking about the weekend. You bring it up to the oldest scribe as he wipes dust off his ink-stained fingers. Week, end, he repeats slowly, as if tasting a strange herb. Oh. You mean festival days? Or rest days? We have those. But, no, they're not regular. He scratches his beard and gestures toward the temple skyline. We rest when the gods demand it. Feast days, burial ceremonies, celestial alignments. All that. But every 7 days. He snorts. That's too often. Life's not that hard. You blink at him. It, kind of is. Maybe for you, he says with a wink. You follow him through a market square where the air smells of dates, onions, and goats having a philosophical disagreement. Vendors shout their prices. Children chase beetles. A dog naps directly in the path of an ox cart, entirely unbothered by the looming wheel. You pause beneath an awning where woven baskets hang like sleeping bats. The shade is welcome. So is the sense that time here isn't as sharp-edged as in your own life. It flows. Not rushed. Not chopped into calendar squares and Outlook notifications. Just, flowing. Historians still argue whether the absence of a 7-day week was a deliberate rejection or just something that never occurred to anyone. Some say the Egyptians did divide months into decades, 10-day groupings called decans, which loosely resemble weeks, but without the relief of a weekend attached. Others believe that the concept of a regular, rest day, was simply foreign to their rhythm, their rituals too rooted in celestial patterns to bother with artificial structures. Meanwhile, you're starting to feel the sun on your neck. A nearby water seller hands you a cup. It's lukewarm and tastes faintly of copper, but it helps. You sit on a low wall, watching a woman with kohl-lined eyes haggle for herbs. She's winning. Always bet on the one with the sharpest eyeliner. Nearby, a craftsman chisels hieroglyphs into a limestone slab. You peer over his shoulder. It's a calendar. Not a wall calendar, though, more like a religious schedule, charting the key festival dates for the year. Here's when we honor Osiris, he explains, pointing to a line of glyphs. Here's the festival of stretching the cord, when we measure land boundaries again after the flood. And this one, he adds with a grin, is the day of satisfying the heart. Good for relaxing. Or stealing sweets. You ask if these are like holidays. Yes, but not like your kind. No gifts. No fireworks. Just the right food. The right words, and sometimes a parade involving goats in hats. That last bit may or may not be a joke. What's clear is that rest exists, but only when time, gods, and harvests allow. There's no routine pause, no expected day to unplug. You work when there is work. You rest when the stars suggest it. And the idea of waiting 5 days just for Saturday? The scribe laughs again. Sounds inefficient. You get it now. To the Egyptians, time is not a grid. It's a spiral. Each year loops back to the same moments, the flood, the harvest, the rituals, but never quite the same. Always a little deeper. A little richer. And within that spiral, people live by rhythms written in sunlight and river mist. As you wander back toward the temple, you notice a mural of a falcon-headed god, Horus, holding what looks like a rope twisted into loops. It's a symbol of infinity. Time without edges. Time without weekends. It's comforting. In its own weird way. You sit down on a stone bench, the warmth of the day settling into your bones, and for a moment, just a moment, you stop caring what day it is. Because here, it's always the right time for something sacred. Or something slow. Or maybe just another sip of barley beer. The Nile is just a shimmer in the distance now. Veined with papyrus and sparkling under the sun like a spilled basket of jewels. You're walking beside it, your sandals crunching softly on a dusty trail that smells faintly of fish and lotus flowers. The air is warm, dense, and sticky enough to make your tunic cling to your back in the most unflattering way possible. Ahead, you spot a small crowd gathered near the water's edge. Farmers, priests, and even a few curious cats seem to be watching something intently. You edge closer, careful not to trip over a discarded gourd or a snoozing goose. There, kneeling by the river, is a priest of Hapi, the god of the Nile's inundation, gently lowering a small wooden object into the water. It's the Nilometer, a simple but sacred tool for measuring the flood. Not a sleek scientific instrument, mind you. More like a glorified stick with dreams of grandeur. You watch as the priest reads the marks etched along its length. Everyone leans in, holding their collective breath. And then, with the confidence of someone who absolutely made this up on the spot, the priest announces, it will be a generous flood. Cheers erupt. Children dance. Someone throws a date into the air. This is how the agricultural calendar begins in Egypt, not with a planner or a Zoom invite, but with river mud, holy guesswork, and a firm belief in divine timing. You walk alongside a farmer who's grinning wide. A good flood means a good harvest, he says. And a good harvest means more bread, more beer, and fewer reasons to sell my cousin for goats. Charming. You ask him how he knows when to plant. We follow the calendar, he says. But not the kind you're used to. Ours tells stories, of stars, of gods, of when to honor the earth. He pauses to wave at a friend dragging a plow carved from wood and pulled by two rather disgruntled oxen. You're starting to realize something. The Egyptian calendar wasn't just a tool for telling time. It was a script for living. Each month had its own festivals, duties, warnings. Like the month of Ake, when the inundation begins. Or Parate, when crops are sown. Or Shimu, the harvest season, when it's acceptable to work your fingers to the bone and also throw the year's best parties. No weekends in sight. Of course, but plenty of feast days. And unlike your modern holidays that tend to involve awkward family dinners or discount TVs, Egyptian festivals were abundant. Loud. Wild, even. The Wipit Renpet, or opening of the year, was a blowout celebration that involved music, feasting, and sometimes even minor acts of chaos that everyone agreed to ignore the next day. The gods, it seems, enjoyed a bit of fun too. But here's the twist, none of it happened on a fixed weekly cycle. Historians still argue whether Egyptian time was too fluid for a proper week. Some suggest that temple schedules rotated on their own mysterious cycles. Others believe workers on royal tombs were given rest days, but not predictably, and certainly not every seventh day. One tablet mentions a crew getting the 10th day off. Another scroll suggests that a priest fasted every third day, though it's unclear whether that meant 3 actual days or just 3 meals. Egyptian math was many things, fascinating, innovative, occasionally infuriating, but never quite as linear as you'd hope. You sip from your water skin and look out over the floodplain. Now dappled with people casting seeds into damp earth. Each of them moves with a kind of rhythm, pausing here, bending there. Brushing their hands clean on linen skirts or wiping sweat with a satisfied grunt. Do you work every day? You ask a boy helping his father scatter barley. He shrugs. Most days. Except when the gods say no. Or when father's back hurts. Or when the boat's missing. Or when there's too much wind. A flexible system, clearly. You're struck by how little anyone here worries about structure. There are rules, yes, and customs. But no rigid time boxes. No weekly schedule to crush the soul. No meetings that could have been hieroglyphs. Instead, time stretches and bends around the needs of the land, the whims of the river, and the occasional goose rebellion. As the sun creeps lower, casting golden rays across the newly flooded fields, a musician strolls by, strumming a lyre and humming a tune. You follow him back toward the village where the scent of roasted onions and lentils is beginning to thicken the air. People are gathering again, this time in the central square, where a makeshift stage of crates and baskets has been assembled. Children sit cross-legged on the ground. Elders lean against pillars wrapped in vines. The festival of Koyak is beginning, a remembrance of Osiris, the god who died, sprouted wheat, and generally outdid everyone in the resurrection department. And this? This might be the closest thing Egypt has to a Sunday. A sacred moment. A pause. A ritual that resets the soul. There's chanting. There's incense. There's a small boy in a crocodile mask who clearly missed rehearsal but is doing his best. You sit quietly and take it all in. No one here is worried about tomorrow. No one is fretting about next Tuesday's budget scrolls. Time is not a cage, it's a tide. And when the tide is gentle, you float. As the first stars prick the sky and the chants mellow into whispers. You feel it too, the soft tug of the calendar as story, not sentence. You wake with a light start, not from any noise, but because a warm breeze is pressing gently on your face. Carrying the mingled scents of acacia smoke, baked earth, and distant bread. The village has already started its day. Again. It's not that there's an alarm. There never was. It's just that time here isn't told, it's felt. And right now, it feels like late morning, the kind where your stomach starts muttering ideas about lentils. You stretch your limbs, feeling the stiffness of a stone bench that was never meant to be a mattress. A kindly vendor passing by hands you a fig without a word. It's perfectly ripe, oozing sweetness. And completely unapologetic about the mess it makes on your chin. The market is busy now, not frantic, not noisy, just humming. Like a beehive on its second cup of beer. You wander through stalls shaded by woven mats and palm fronds, past piles of garlic braided like necklaces and bundles of leeks stacked like scrolls. One seller waves you over and proudly shows off a collection of, wait, are those calendars? Indeed they are. But not paper ones. They're painted on pottery shards, carved into ivory. Even etched into palm wood. You squint at one, trying to decipher the symbols. A crocodile wearing a wig. A falcon with suspiciously well-manicured talons. A line of reeds in tidy rows. Each glyph, the seller explains, marks a festival or event. This one belonged to a priestess. See here. That's the day of the beautiful reunion. Hathor returns to Horus at Edfu. There's dancing. Lots of wine. You raise an eyebrow. Sounds like a long weekend. He grins. More like a sacred excuse. You're starting to notice a pattern. The Egyptian year was split into 3 main seasons, Ake, flood, Parate, emergence, and Shimu, harvest. Each season had 4 months. Each month had 30 days. And after all that, 5 extra days were just tossed in at the end. Like surprise fries at the bottom of the bag. These bonus days, called epigomenal days, weren't part of any month. They floated outside the usual structure, reserved for the birthdays of gods. Imagine New Year's Eve, but it lasts 5 days and involves more hippos than champagne. But still, no sign of weekends. Historians still argue whether these extra 5 days acted as rest periods for some. Maybe for the wealthy, or temple staff. Maybe not. Some scholars even debate whether common laborers got rotation days off during long work projects. But there's no direct mention of a Saturday equivalent. No, praise Ra, it's Friday. You run your fingers over one of the calendar shards. The symbols are both precise and whimsical, like someone trying very hard to make sacred knowledge fun for teenagers. This one, the vendor says, shows the calendar from Abydos. See the notches? They marked each day with a tally. At the end of each 10-day stretch, offerings were made. You nod. A week? Sort of. We called it a decade. But no one got to sleep in. You begin to wonder, did they not want weekends? Or did they simply not need them? Because life, here, isn't neatly divided into work and not work. It's a cycle. You farm when the Nile recedes. You build when the fields are dry. You rest when the gods say rest, which might fall on a Tuesday or never. Time obeys the cosmos, not your calendar app. You leave the market and wander down toward a nearby village school, though school may be a generous word. It's a courtyard filled with young boys scratching characters into clay with sharp reeds. The teacher, a stern woman who could melt granite with her glare, is drilling them on the names of deities and lunar cycles. She beckons you over and points to a tablet. He wrote the wrong symbol for festival. See? That's the sign for blessed cow. You raise your eyebrows. Big difference. Depends on the cow, she deadpans. You chat with her a while. And she admits something surprising. We don't teach weeks here. The gods' movements matter more. Sirius rising. The lunar months. The shadow on the obelisk. These are what tell us when to act. No 7-day rule. Just sky signs and seasonal shifts. You wonder how they'd react to a smartwatch. Probably trade it for 3 onions and a good reed pen. You sit nearby as the boys practice their glyphs. One boy is writing about the festival of drunkenness. Yes, that's a real thing, celebrated in honor of Sekhmet. The idea was to drink so much beer dyed red with pomegranate juice that the goddess was fooled into believing she'd spilled enough blood already. Sleep aid or cautionary tale? Hard to say. You glance up as a breeze catches the edge of your tunic. The sun is high now. Heat pools in the courtyards. Flies buzz lazily around fruit baskets. Somewhere nearby, a priest chants to Batet for good health. Or maybe just for fewer cats in the granary. You're beginning to feel it in your bones. Time here doesn't ask you to keep up. It asks you to tune in. And maybe that's the point. The absence of weekends isn't a mistake. It's a mirror of a world that didn't need them. Where work was seasonal, rest was sacred, and time was measured in shadows, stars, and river songs. You lie back on a smooth stone bench in the schoolyard. One of the boys brings you a lotus blossom and says it's for thinking well. You close your eyes. No ticking clocks. No countdowns. Just the sound of the wind weaving through date palms and the slow, steady breath of a world that runs on rhythms older than ours. You wake again to laughter, the soft, rolling kind that travels across warm stone and sunlit courtyards like a breeze. A group of women are sitting near a shaded well, weaving mats and gossiping with the rhythmic ease of people who know each other too well to lie convincingly. You rise and walk over slowly, dusting off the back of your tunic with as much dignity as possible. One of the women waves you over, smiling with the slight mischief of someone who might casually insult your sandals. You're the traveler, she says. We've heard. Come. Sit. Learn what real work looks like. You oblige. She hands you a papyrus stalk and shows you how to split and twist it for weaving. Your first attempt looks less like a mat and more like something a nervous goat might produce, but she pats your arm anyway. Good try. Maybe stick to storytelling. You watch as the women work, quick fingers, shared laughter, quiet strength. Children run in and out of the circle like bees around a flower. Somewhere behind the houses, a donkey brays indignantly at nothing in particular. The topic turns to the calendar again. One of the older women gestures at the sky, where the midday sun is glaring like a tax collector. See that? Halfway to baking bread without a fire. Everyone laughs. You ask how they keep track of the days. Surely, with so much to do, there must be some kind of reliable planner. Oh, we know the days, she says. Every 30-day month has its own mood. And there are feast days, those we never forget. My favorite is the Feast of Batet. Wine, flowers, music. We all pretend to be goddesses. You raise an eyebrow. Only pretend? She winks. They tell you that many households keep simple almanacs. Not with hours or appointments, but with symbols, an ankh for good fortune. A black dot for an unlucky day, a little lion for when you need courage. They're part astrology, part tradition, part collective memory. You ask whether they get a day off. Another woman snorts. From what? The bread? The children? The husband snoring like a dying ox. Yet, her tone is light. Not bitter. They rest when they need to, not when a schedule dictates. If someone is sick, they rest. If it's a feast day, they celebrate. If there's a funeral, everyone stops together. It's more elastic. Historians still argue whether this informal system served as a kind of proto-week. Did people rely on their own internal rhythms more than external commands? Did temples subtly guide the cadence of life, even outside their walls? Was the weekend simply too modern a concept to map backward? You wander with them as they go to fetch water. The path winds past homes made of sun-baked brick. Their courtyards shaded by fig trees and flanked by painted pottery. You note again the total absence of clocks. Not even a sundial. Time here is marked by tasks, not ticks. You pass a small shrine along the way. Inside, offerings of dates, onions, and a ceramic cat are laid before a modest statue. A prayer is murmured, not loudly, but sincerely. One of the women explains, "That's for Hecate, goddess of childbirth. My sister's daughter is expecting." You nod. Another rhythm. Another reason to pause. Another mark on the calendar that isn't about work, but about life. Later that afternoon, as the sun begins to slump behind the distant dunes, you join the women for a shared meal. Lentils, bread. A small jar of beer. Children fall asleep in laps or on woven mats. Even the chickens seem to settle. You mention weekends again, gently. But wouldn't it be nice to have one day where no one works? They think about it. Then one shrugs. Maybe. But life isn't so cruel here that we need to escape it. It's a line that stays with you. Not because it's poetic, but because it's true. Here. The rhythms are hard but understandable. Predictable. Tied to earth and water and sky. There's no office. No inbox. No artificial sense of urgency. And so, there's no need to bolt from it 1 or 2 days a week. You help tidy up, brushing crumbs from a reed mat and stacking clay cups. In the background, an old woman is humming a lullaby that's probably older than most buildings in your hometown. As night falls again, you lie back under the stars, sharp and countless against the velvet sky, and you think about how differently this civilization views time. It's a river, not a ladder. A wheel, not a race. And in that stillness, you begin to feel something rare. Unscheduled. Unmeasured. By the time the first hint of dawn rolls across the horizon, painting the sky in those sleepy hues of peach and deep violet, you're already awake, but not because you had to be. The rhythm of life here is persuasive. You wake when the roosters start clearing their throats, when the Nile sighs against its banks, when the palms begin to whisper among themselves. You're not quite ready to rise, though. Not yet. You lie on your mat, staring up at the ceiling made of woven reeds and thinking about everything that's happened. The sounds outside are so familiar now, grinding stones, low conversation. The clink of bronze on clay. And still, no bell, no horn, no factory whistle telling you to get moving. Eventually, you rise and stretch. Pulling on your sandals with the resigned grace of someone who knows they'll be full of sand again within 5 minutes. Today, you're heading to the granaries, those enormous hive-shaped buildings on the edge of town where time is stored in the form of barley. The overseer there greets you with a wide grin and a broom in one hand. Ever shovel wheat with a flat paddle in 40-degree heat, he asks. You smile, hoping he's kidding. He is not. As you labor in the granary, moving grain from one bin to another while sweating out about 4 liters of water an hour, you begin to wonder again, how did they do this every day? Where was the pause? The rest? Wasn't there supposed to be at least one day for lazing in a hammock? But this is the thing, you start noticing the rhythm. Not just in your work, but in theirs. They don't push like people running a race. It's more like a psalm with no chorus. One man hums while he scoops. Another stops every now and then to drink from a shared clay jug. The overseer tells jokes that, somehow, always involve a crocodile and a temple scribe. After a while, you realize the shift is about 10 days long, just like the decades you learned about earlier. Every 10 days, there's a festival, or a break, or at least a noticeable pause. Not a weekend in our sense, but something more fluid. Less of a curtain drop, more of a soft fade-out. Historians still argue whether these decades acted as pseudo-weeks, with rest days scattered based on necessity, ritual, or pure exhaustion. There's evidence that workers on royal tombs got regular breaks. One Ostracon from Deir el-Medina even lists someone being sick from drinking, a surprisingly honest sick note. You bring this up during a midday break, sitting under the shade of a tamarisk tree with a few workers. One of them chuckles. Ah yes, the festival flu. We all get that. You sip some date beer, tangy, surprisingly fizzy, and definitely not what your modern palate was expecting. Another worker explains that while there were no weekends, festivals were frequent. And no one expected full productivity during them. Feasts mean dancing. Dancing means sore legs. Sore legs mean slow shoveling. Makes sense. You ask about their year, how they keep it all straight. Another worker pulls out a clay tablet and starts drawing in the dust, 3 seasons, each with 4 months. 30 days in each month. 5 floaty days on top. The gods need birthdays too, he says with a wink. But again, no weeks. No Saturdays to look forward to. Just cycles. Water levels. Moon shapes. The sudden arrival of locusts. All things that ask you to act, not tell you. By late afternoon, you're covered in dust, sweat, and a fair amount of wheat. A boy runs in with a message carved into a sliver of pottery. A priest is offering a reading at the temple tonight. Under the moon. The workers perk up. He's good, one says. Last time he told the story of Set trying to turn into a lettuce plant. You blink. A lettuce plant? Don't ask. As night falls, you follow the crowd to the temple. There's a line of oil lamps flickering like sleepy fireflies, leading up stone steps and into a cool, incense-soaked chamber. The priest is already seated. His voice calm and unhurried. He begins telling the story of Thoth and the moon, how the god of wisdom stole time from the sun to create the extra 5 days in the year. Without him, the priest says, there would be no time for birth. The gods could not have arrived. You sit in the back, lulled by the cadence of his voice and the warm glow of the lamps. The people around you lean in. Chuckle quietly, murmur in agreement. This is their version of rest. Not a full day off, but a shared moment of pause. A breath. A reminder that not everything needs to be done right now. And you feel it, that subtle shift. Time softening. Edges blurring. Not stopping, but slowing down just enough to make room for wonder. As the priest finishes, people file out quietly. You step outside into the cool night, greeted by a sky so full of stars it feels heavy. The moon hangs low and gold above the Nile, its reflection dancing like a sleepy cat. You take a deep breath and smile. Weekends, it turns out, might be overrated. Morning again. And this time, you wake up with a purpose, not assigned, but chosen. Today. You're going to the house of life. Not a metaphor, mind you, but a real place. Tucked behind the temple complex and shaded by columns etched with stories older than some continents. The house of life is part library, part scriptorium, part mystical retreat. It's where scribes work, where healers learn, and where the rhythms of time are not measured in hours, but in symbols. Scrolls, and sacred words. You step carefully through the threshold. The air here is different, cool, perfumed with ink and incense. A scribe with impeccable posture greets you with a nod that somehow conveys both welcome and, don't touch anything. He leads you past rows of papyrus scrolls stacked in niches. Some tied with red string, others marked with wax seals. He begins to speak softly, as if even time lowers its voice in this room. We record the days, he says. Not all of them. Just the ones that ask to be remembered. You glance at the walls, etched with celestial diagrams, star maps, solar calendars, and scenes of ritual offerings. You recognize some of it from earlier. The calendar of 12 months, each with 30 days, followed by the 5 epigomenal days that didn't belong to any month. And what about weeks, you ask, already guessing the answer. The scribe lifts an eyebrow. You mean segments of days? Arbitrary stops in time? You cough. Yes, I suppose. No. That would be like carving the Nile into cups. We honor cycles, not interruptions. He unrolls a scroll for you, handwritten in black and red ink. A calendar not of work schedules, but of omens. This day is good for planting. This one for medicine. This one, best stay inside. Each day has a personality. A feeling. A reputation, even. Historians still argue whether this represented a kind of spiritual scheduling system. Were the evil and lucky days used to plan events or merely reflect ancient superstitions? Some scholars believe the calendar had an intimate connection to astrology, while others think it served more bureaucratic purposes. As you pore over the symbols, you begin to see the beauty in it, no blocks of Monday through Sunday, but rather a living sequence of days with names like Day of Opening the Portal or Day of Appeasing the Sky Flame. It feels like poetry disguised as planning. A younger apprentice walks by, carrying a stack of palm leaf notebooks and mumbling what sounds like a weather forecast for pharaohs. You follow him into a smaller chamber, where healers are consulting a manual of medical days, some for cutting, others for purging, a few that advise absolutely no treatment at all. One entry reads, "Do not bathe on this day, lest your bones become hollow." You tuck that one away mentally for the next time someone suggests a Sunday spa day. Outside the House of Life, you find a quiet bench shaded by fig trees. You sit, letting the whispers of the scribes and rustle of papyrus drift through the air. You think about how time is handled in your world, so ruthlessly carved up, scheduled down to the quarter hour. 30-minute meetings. 1-hour workouts. 15-minute coffee breaks. Here, time isn't divided, it's described. Interpreted. Even pampered. You recall the scribe's words, "We honor cycles." It's not that they didn't value rest. They just wove it into everything else, into festivals, into omens, into the rituals of washing, singing, mourning. Instead of carving out free time, they treated all time as sacred, and some moments as sacred plus. And speaking of sacred, you follow the sound of chanting toward a garden within the temple walls. It's an oasis of papyrus plants, blue lotuses, and small stone benches. A priestess sits near a water basin, mixing a potion with ingredients that include honey, pomegranate seeds, and, is that crocodile dung again? You sit near her, quiet. She doesn't ask your name. She simply offers a small clay cup and says, "For protection." You drink. It tastes like determination with a hint of fermented sadness. You strike up a conversation about timekeeping, and she tells you something that catches you off guard: "We measure the Nile, not the day." She means it literally. The annual flood wasn't just a natural event, it was the event. Its rhythm dictated planting, building, praying, resting. If you wanted to know what season it was, you watched the river. If the water was low, people prepared offerings. If it was high, they celebrated. If it failed to come, they panicked, gently, and with incense. And so, the river became a kind of calendar. Not one you hang on a wall, but one you step into. One you feel in your bones. You stare into the basin as ripples glide across the surface. Somewhere, a wind chime sings a minor chord. It's late afternoon now, and time feels thick and golden, like syrup on warm bread. You rise slowly, thank the priestess, and make your way back toward the village. As you walk, you begin to hear something unusual, a low, melodic drumming. Following the sound, you arrive at a small open courtyard where a group of men and women are rehearsing for an upcoming festival. The rhythm is hypnotic, repetitive, but not rigid. Each beat is slightly different, depending on who's drumming. And suddenly, you get it. They didn't need weekends. They had rhythm. They had cycles. They had this quiet agreement with the cosmos that rest would come, not always when expected, but always when needed. And you begin to wonder, in a world of floating holidays, singing calendars, and moonlit scrolls, what are you racing against, exactly? The morning haze curls lazily above the Nile, painting the air with that familiar golden pearl shimmer. Today, your legs ache in that good way, proof that you've earned the right to walk slowly. You've been living without weekends for some time now. Yet somehow, you're more rested than you were back home with your precious Saturdays. You're not quite sure what today will hold, but as usual, neither is anyone else. That's kind of the point. You meander toward the edge of the village, where a caravan has just arrived, traders from Nubia. They bring with them bundles of incense, polished stones, honey cakes. And, unexpectedly, a monkey wearing a necklace made entirely of fish bones. The monkey looks unimpressed by this fashion choice. You make a mental note, even in 1350 BCE, accessories are hit or miss. One of the traders offers you a date, sticky and warm from the sun. Another shows you an object you can't quite identify, it's a timekeeping tool, but not a clock. It's a merkit. A simple yet clever instrument used to track stars. This is how night time was divided, into 12 hours, based on the movement of certain stars across the sky. But those hours weren't equal like yours. In winter, the night hours stretched long and cold. In summer, they were short and sweet. Time, here, adjusted itself to the sky. Flexible. Intuitive. Human. The trader grins. Try fitting that into a digital planner. You laugh, then find yourself invited to share the evening meal with them. Over lentils, beer, and flatbread that tastes exactly like it looks, which is to say, like burnt sandpaper, you listen to stories of distant lands and star-guided journeys. One of the older women explains how they use the stars to know when to leave a place. If Sopdet appears too early, she warns, it means the flood is impatient. Sopdet. You remember her from the scrolls. The personification of Sirius, the star that heralded the Nile's flooding. Her rising was, in effect, New Year's Day. And not just because the calendar said so, but because life responded to it. Historians still debate the exact mechanics of how Egyptian priests tracked Sirius's heliacal rising so precisely. Some suggest they used special sightlines built into temple roofs. Others believe they relied on the experience of generations of stargazers who knew the sky like a mother knows her child. You sit back, letting the firelight flicker across the trader's face as she continues. We don't follow time. We watch it. Like a cat you don't want to scare off. The group chuckles. It's a good line. And it sticks with you. After the meal, you're shown a set of small wooden figurines used in games. One of the traders says they play to pass time. But the twinkle in her eye suggests something deeper. This isn't boredom management. It's communion. It's a chance to laugh. To pause. You lie back on a woven mat as night wraps around you. The stars begin their slow dance overhead. Someone begins humming, a tune that loops gently, like water slipping over stones. And there, under that impossible sky, you reflect again on what life was like for the man who gave us the 365-day year. His name, long rubbed smooth by time's thumb, may be forgotten. But his design, it stuck. He noticed that Sirius always returned to the sky on the same date every year, just before the inundation. That meant something. That measured something. And with it, he charted a year with 12 months. 30 days each, and those 5 strange bonus days that didn't belong anywhere else. The result? A calendar that almost kept up with the sun, drifting just a quarter day per year. Not bad for a guy whose mathematical tools included rope, shadows, and sheer stubbornness. But, bless him, he didn't think to divide it into weeks. You can't really blame him. There was no cultural pressure, no celestial model, and no real reason. The lunar cycles didn't naturally split into 7-day units. That whole idea wouldn't catch on until centuries later, when Babylonian influence crept into calendars across the Mediterranean. The Egyptians were busy watching Sirius and the Nile. You turn your head slightly, watching a priest in the distance perform a small ritual. He's thanking Sopdet for her appearance. No one claps. No one schedules the next meeting. He just finishes, bows to the stars, and walks off. Simple. Humble. Time-aware, not time-bound. A mosquito buzzes past your ear, reminding you that even ancient peace comes with its own minor curses. You sweat half-heartedly. Then remember the priestess's protection potion and consider drinking a little more. You close your eyes and let the night wash over you. There's nothing to get up early for. No Monday looming like an executioner in office casual. Just the stars, the soft sound of laughter, and the vague awareness that tomorrow might bring dates, or scrolls, or absolutely nothing. You find yourself thinking, perhaps time isn't something you own. Perhaps it's something you're allowed to borrow, if you treat it kindly. The traders begin to pack up quietly. You help. If only to keep moving, and they teach you a phrase in their tongue that loosely translates to, "May your days spill slowly." That feels right. As they head off into the distance, a lantern swinging from the lead camel, you turn toward the riverbank. The reflection of the stars on the water reminds you that nothing here is ever quite still, yet nothing ever feels rushed. And with each breath, each slow step, each quiet heartbeat, you feel yourself matching that rhythm. Whatever happened to weekends? You're not sure anymore. But you're beginning to suspect they were the consolation prize all along. Your feet crunch softly over dry reeds as dawn breaks, casting an amber glow across the Nile's shoulder. Somewhere in the reeds, a heron takes off with deliberate grace, no hurry, just flight. You stretch your arms, feeling the weight of sleep still clinging to your limbs like desert dust. There's no bell to signal a new work week, no case of the Mondays, no inbox waiting to ambush your peace. Just another string of sunlit hours, loosely stitched together by what people feel like doing. You're beginning to understand the rhythm, not lazy, not disorganized, just aligned with something older than alarm clocks. You decide to follow a fisherman this morning. His boat is small and carved from acacia wood, and it looks like it's been patched more times than it was ever whole. Still, it floats. And as he pushes off into the morning mist, he doesn't check a watch or mention a schedule. He just says, "The river's ready." The man's name is Hori. You climb aboard, careful not to tip the vessel or knock over his lucky basket of catfish bones. Apparently, they bring good fortune or at least amusing stories. Out on the water, Hori shows you his method. Using a weighted net, judging current speeds, reading the sun's reflection. It's less fishing and more a conversation with the river. You ask nicely, and sometimes she feeds you. He says with a grin. As the hours pass, you realize something: Hori's life is entirely seasonal. His tasks depend on what the river offers, not what the calendar demands. There's no Friday to look forward to. No weekend barbecue. Just the knowledge that today the fish might bite, or they might not, and both are acceptable outcomes. He mentions an upcoming festival. One that lands on the last day of the year, one of the 5 extra days the calendar doesn't quite know what to do with. These are the epigomenal days, and Hori treats them like old friends. Days outside time, he calls them. These bonus days were wedged in to make the calendar whole, aligning it more closely with the solar year. But because they weren't part of any month, they felt a little unmoored, free-floating, sacred, strange. Each one honored a different deity's birthday, starting with Osiris. Historians still debate how these days were observed in daily life. Were they solemn? Joyous? Dangerous? Some scrolls suggest people stayed indoors, afraid of bad luck. Others say they held raucous feasts. Maybe it varied year by year, depending on omens, river height, or how generous the fish had been. Today, Hori honors them with rest. Not sleep, necessarily, but deliberate pause. I drink date wine, he says. I listen to the frogs. I do not chase the river. You like that? Back on shore, you walk through a date grove where women are harvesting ripe fruit with slow precision. The air smells like sugar and bark. A child giggles as he tries to juggle 3 dates and fails spectacularly. His mother doesn't scold, just hands him a 4th date and a gentle pat on the head. You ask her if she ever gets tired of the repetition, planting, harvesting, drying, repeating. She shrugs. Why would I? The dates are different every year. Some are sweeter. Some are stubborn. So am I. A short distance away, a group of elders sits under a tamarisk tree, debating something in hushed but animated tones. You linger nearby, catching pieces of the conversation. They're discussing time itself, why certain days feel longer, why some dreams predict floods. One elder insists that time is like the wind, it moves when it wants. And you can only tell where it's been. Another argues that time is like bread, it rises best when left alone. You smile. Even old men here debate metaphysics with the patience of bakers. You continue walking, watching a group of young children drawing lines in the sand. They're creating their own calendar, complete with star days, river days, and frog-chasing days. You watch as they laugh, argue, rearrange their symbols, and finally declare, today is a lion day. When asked what that means, one girl shrugs and says, strong naps. Loud dreams. You'd vote for that as a weekly tradition, if you had weeks. By now, the heat has grown soft, and the sky is that sleepy shade of blue that makes you feel like you're inside a watercolor. You sit on a woven mat beside a merchant who's setting out beads in careful little piles, 5 by 5. When asked if she always arranges them that way, she nods. I like 5s. It reminds me that not everything fits. She gestures to a nearby sundial, just a flat stone, really, with a small peg in the center. The shadow is inching leftward. See, she says. No hour lines. You just feel it. Time, in Egypt, isn't hidden. It's simply uninterested in micromanaging your life. You ask her if she's ever heard of a weekend. She thinks a moment. You mean like a holiday? Sort of. A day off. Every 7 days. She blinks. That sounds exhausting. You laugh harder than you expected. And then, as evening falls, you hear the gentle clang of temple bells. A ritual is starting. Not one that happens every Friday, but one that happens when the moon reaches just the right shape, or when the barley begins to hum in the wind. The timing isn't fixed, it's felt. You slip into the outer circle, standing among others in silence. There's music, soft, lilting, wordless. There's incense. And above all, there's that odd feeling again, that time here isn't counted. It's witnessed. You stand quietly, not counting the minutes, but allowing them to count you. And as night blooms fully overhead, with stars returning to their ancient routes, you find yourself utterly unbothered by the lack of a Sunday. By now, you're no longer keeping track of the days. And oddly enough, that doesn't feel like losing time, it feels like finally putting it down after carrying it around for too long. You rise before sunrise, as many here do. Drawn not by obligation but by the sound of the world stretching. Crickets hush. The river sighs. Someone coughs softly from a neighboring hut. Then starts humming a melody that sounds as old as sandals. You've made a habit of spending your mornings with a scribe named Menifer. He's meticulous, clever. And often smells like lamp oil and crushed papyrus. His workshop is shaded by palm fronds and filled with the scratching of reed pens. There, among ink-stained scrolls and half-written love poems. You're learning a curious truth, even the people who measured time didn't feel the need to master it. Menifer is copying a list of feast days today, hundreds of them, scattered across the months. Look here, he says, pointing to a curl of symbols. This one's for the day of repelling the sandstorm with beer. Very important. You tilt your head. How often do sandstorms happen? He shrugs. Less often than beer. You laugh, and he chuckles too, then leans in to explain. Many Egyptian festivals weren't attached to rigid, recurring cycles like modern weekends. Instead, they were cosmic checkpoints, tied to star risings, river moods, or mythic reenactments. Sometimes, the priests would consult omens before confirming a date. Historians still argue whether the common people actually observed all these holidays or if some remained mostly priestly rituals. But archaeological evidence, like painted jars, songs, and festival masks, suggests that at least some celebrations were shared. You ask Menifer whether he ever gets tired of writing dates and rituals. He scratches his chin. Sometimes. But then I remember, each scroll is a raft. It keeps us afloat across generations. Later, you walk with him to the temple archives, where ancient calendars are kept in clay jars and under dust-heavy linen. You handle one, gently, and see the signs of wear, smudges from calloused thumbs, a spill of dried ink. A faint doodle of what might be a crocodile in a wig. It hits you. This calendar wasn't just created to track days. It was an effort to remember living. Outside, a boy races past with a kite made from papyrus strips and bird feathers. His mother follows, waving a stick and shouting something about not flying it near the sacred ibis. Menifer shakes his head. Every generation thinks they invented chaos. You pass a cluster of priests painting the walls with new inscriptions. One man is carefully depicting the god Thoth holding a crescent moon. For marking the months, Menifer explains. Though we pretend it's always accurate. You arch an eyebrow. It's not. Not quite, he admits. The lunar months and solar calendar don't line up neatly. So we negotiate. Turns out, even Egypt's revered calendar required a bit of hand-waving. Every so often, they'd drift off course, celebrating a harvest festival when the fields were bare, or marking the Nile's rise after it already flooded. But people adapted. They told new stories, made adjustments. Shrugged and carried on. There's something comforting in that. You stop to rest beneath a tall fig tree, watching a woman prepare perfume from lotus petals. Her daughter is counting them aloud, 6, 7, 8. Do you count every day like this, you ask? Only the fragrant ones, the mother says with a wink. The fig tree hums with bees, and you feel yourself drifting again, into the calm. Into the quiet, into the realization that time here isn't so much a rule as a rhythm. As you close your eyes briefly, you hear another voice, one of the older scribes teaching young boys in the distance. He's chanting something melodic, almost hypnotic. You catch a phrase, to remember is to live twice. You open your eyes. The breeze is warm now, heavy with the scent of flowers and dust. That phrase stays with you as you continue your walk. You pass workers chiseling away at a new public sundial. It's simple, just a stone slab and a short vertical post. One worker wipes his brow and smiles. It won't be perfect, he says, but at least it'll confuse the goats less. Apparently. The last sundial had goat-related casualties. You decide not to ask. Eventually, you make your way toward the edge of the city, where homes get smaller and the earth more cracked. Here, families live in tight-knit rows of mud brick, their doors painted with protective glyphs. You're invited in for bread and beer, the beer thick, the bread even thicker. Over the meal, an elder tells you about the old way of telling time by scent. When incense of myrrh began to fade, it meant the hour was passing. When it burned halfway, people switched tasks. She smiles. We had scratch-and-sniff scheduling before you lot thought of it. In a corner, a boy draws symbols in ash on the floor. He's not marking hours. He's sketching the story of Ra's nightly journey through the underworld. When he finishes, he asks, "Do you think the sun ever wants a break?" You stare at the drawing for a long moment. Maybe the sun, too, wishes for weekends. But Ra doesn't get one. He just rises. Again and again. Maybe, you think, that's the point. Not to escape time, but to keep returning to it, gentler each time. The family gifts you a small talisman, a carved stone with the symbol of Jehudi, the god of wisdom and scribes. To help you remember what matters, they say. And as you step back out into the light, dust in your sandals and scrolls in your hand, you realize you've gone several days without knowing what day it is. And you've never felt more on time. The streets are busier now. Like the city has exhaled and stretched after a nap. Oxen drag carts loaded with amphorae, men argue over fish prices, and somewhere in the distance, someone is learning to play a reed flute badly. You wander back toward the temple district, and your eyes catch a curious structure, a small square of carefully laid stone blocks, surrounding a raised column. You pause. It's another calendar marker, but unlike the sundials or star maps, this one seems ceremonial. A priest in training named Kai notices your curiosity. He's young. His kohl-lined eyes far too serious for someone who still trips over his own robes. That's the festival stone, he says proudly. Each side tracks different celestial alignments. Solstices. Equinoxes, even when Sirius returns. You crouch to examine the engravings. Animals, stars, gods, all inlaid in soft gold and blue paint. Kai kneels beside you, careful not to smudge anything. We used to hold great gatherings here, he says, but now, mostly tourists. Tourists. He smirks. Goat herders who pretend they came for spiritual reasons. You ask how it worked, and he explains. Ancient astronomer priests would use tools, simple ones like plumb lines or sighting rods, to watch the heavens. When Sirius, or Sopdet, rose just before dawn, it meant the Nile would soon flood. And that was the real New Year. Not January. Not even a lunar cycle. Just the star and the water. A cosmic alarm clock. Historians still argue whether this heliacal rising system was precise or ritualistic, more poetry than science. But it undeniably shaped the calendar. That celestial signal told the Egyptians it was time to prepare, to plant, to celebrate. You imagine it, an entire civilization standing on rooftops at dawn, holding their breath for a single shimmering dot in the sky. Kai tells you some priests would even fast the night before, hoping for a clearer vision. And if the clouds blocked it? We declared it anyway, he says. You can't let the gods think you're unprepared. You smile. Bureaucracy meets belief. As you continue your walk, Kai tags along, recounting how other festivals filled the year. Not just religious rites, but moments of sweet absurdity, mock weddings between vegetables, boat races in honor of fish deities. And public plays where actors dressed as sacred baboons. One involved people pretending to be onions and rolling down sand dunes. You ask, do you still do that one? He nods. Once a year. Mostly children. Sometimes slightly drunk adults. It turns out the Egyptian calendar wasn't just about solemn rituals, it was full of play, parody, and poetic nonsense. It reflected not just the sun and moon, but the heartbeat of a people who didn't mind laughing in the face of eternity. You arrive at a granary, its walls cool and echoing. Inside, tall clay jars line the walls like mute sentinels. A scribe named Tamed greets you, holding a stylus made from a split palm reed. "You're here for the day books?" she asks. Already reaching for a bundle of faded parchment. The day books are records of daily life, weather, deliveries, births, gossip. Not epic scrolls, but scribbled truths. One entry simply says, "Man lost sandal in canal. Returned smelling of fish. Entire village informed." Tamed laughs. "That one's my favorite. I've used it in at least 3 prayers for humility." These books don't just record events. They anchor the ephemeral. Each scribble is a heartbeat, a proof that someone lived, noticed, and bothered to remember. You ask whether these were officially tied to the 365-day calendar. She hesitates. Kind of. But mostly we just kept writing. Time is squishy when you're recording human things. She hands you a soft rag and shows you how to gently clean a scroll. Careful. You're touching someone else's Tuesday. It feels sacred. And a little silly. You spend hours with her. Reading lines like, "Today, 3 cows broke loose. 1 returned. 2 remain at large. And, bread delivery late. Blamed boat ghost. Accepted." By now, the sky begins to tinge gold with evening. Kai returns, holding a sticky fig and wearing more confidence. "They're preparing for the festival," he says, gesturing toward the riverbank. "Want to help?" "Of course you do. The festival," he explains, "isn't on a strict date. We start when the water tastes like moonlight again." You raise a skeptical eyebrow. "Or when the frogs sing in F sharp." Either works. You join a group decorating a bark, a ceremonial boat carved with lotus patterns. Its sails are woven from dyed linen, soft as sleep. A woman hands you a bundle of incense reeds and tells you where to place them. She's not smiling, but her eyes are kind. By dusk, the boat is ready. Candles are lit, music begins, flutes, hand drums. Voices rising in languages old enough to have forgotten their own grammar. Children run between your legs. Someone hands you a small cup of date wine and a roasted chickpea. As the bark floats gently on the water, glowing with tiny flames, someone murmurs beside you, "It's not about precision. It's about presence." You turn to ask who spoke, but they're gone. Only the water remains, rippling with candlelight and soft laughter. The stars begin to show again. You find yourself watching for Sirius, just like the ancient priests. And when you think you spot it, you smile, not because you're sure, but because now you're part of the waiting. Time, in this place, is not a clock. It's a conversation. You lie back on the riverbank. Head cushioned by your arm, and close your eyes for a moment. Around you, the city pulses with life, some predictable, some entirely made up. A calendar written not just in stars, but in spilled wine. Misfired jokes, and unfinished songs. You drift. Not quite asleep, but not fully awake either. The ground beneath you is warm with the day's leftover sun. And the buzz of evening insects fills the air like a lullaby of static and silk. From the edge of the riverbank, a soft voice reaches you. You can't leave Egypt without meeting the man who actually built the calendar. You crack an eye open. It's Tamed, the scribe from the granary. Now holding a small lamp and a grin too smug to ignore. "The man?" you ask, sitting up slowly, stretching a kink from your neck. "Well, a man. Maybe the man." Possibly just a man who said he was the man. Historical certainty is a luxury we don't afford here. She leads you through winding alleys lit by oil lamps and the quiet flicker of starshine. Until you arrive at a modest courtyard garden. It smells of mint, papyrus, and something faintly burnt. Inside, a scholar is seated cross-legged beside a shallow pool. Meet Seshet's favorite headache, Tamari says, gesturing. This is Engta. You blink. Didn't he die, like, 1,500 years ago? Sure, Engta says without looking up. And yet. No one else seems interested in doing my job, so I linger. He's clearly a reenactor. Or maybe not. Egypt is funny like that. He gestures for you to sit. You want to know about the calendar? Let me ruin it for you. We didn't forget weekends. We erased them. He waits, satisfied with the drama. You wait back. See, we had something better, the Decans. 10-day weeks. 30-day months. 12 months. 5 bonus days. Boom, 365. You ask about the bonus days. Ah, yes. The Hierouran Pet, the epigomenal days. 5 days outside the calendar, set aside for divine birthdays, Osiris, Horus, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. Each day sacred. Each one, chaotic. He leans closer. No one worked those days. No one got married. No one signed contracts. People mostly drank pomegranate wine and avoided upsetting cats. You smile. That feels very on brand. Historians still argue whether the epigomenal days were practical, political, or purely mythic insertions. Some think they were a fix for earlier lunar misalignment, others think they were ceremonial leftovers from even older systems. Engta, for his part, just shrugs. We needed the days. We gave them stories. That's how humans do time. It's never just counting. It's meaning. You glance at his papyrus scrolls, covered in impossibly neat hieratic script. So you were the one who made the 365-day system? Possibly. Or I stole it. Or I dreamed it during a fever brought on by spoiled goat cheese. Time isn't linear, it's recursive. You stare at him. He smiles. Sorry. I had too much date syrup. You ask what came before this version of the calendar, and he sighs. Madness. Lunar madness. The months drifted. Festivals fell in winter. Crops starved. Priests despaired. Imagine trying to schedule a crocodile blessing and it lands during the dry season. You do imagine it. It goes badly. So, he continues, we fixed it. Aligned with Sirius. Ignored the moon. Built an artificial year that matched the flooding Nile. And weekends? We tried rest days. The workers ignored them. The scribes misrecorded them. The priests declared every day sacred until no one showed up. Eventually, we stopped trying. The temples became the calendar. Work, worship, rest, all in cycles of 10. It hits you then. They didn't forget weekends. They simply didn't invent them. Instead, time was woven into the rhythms of labor, worship, and stars. There was no Saturday to anticipate or Monday to dread. Just patterns, rituals repeated until they became comfort. Engta hands you a small clay tablet. We even tried leap years. Julius Caesar took our calendar and added a quarter day. I would have liked the elegance. But also, I liked that the Nile did the adjusting for us. Nature handled leap years. He looks up at the stars. Do you still use my calendar? Kind of, you say. We call it the Gregorian calendar now. He grins. Sounds suspiciously Latin. Because it is. Ugh. You sit with him in silence for a while. Crickets chirp nearby. Somewhere. A cat meows dramatically, probably for no reason at all. Finally, you ask him if he misses the old system. I miss when people looked up more, he says. We built our time by watching the heavens. You lot look down, at glass rectangles. I suppose they glow too. You glance at your hands. You'd left your phone back in a different century. He offers a final thought. Calendars aren't for control. They're for memory. To remember the floods, the harvest, the gods, the stories. And yourself. With that, Enkta rises, stretches, and walks into the darkness. Muttering something about realigning Venus with soup night. You sit there, blinking. Wondering if that was real. Probably not. Probably. Who knows? As you make your way back toward your resting place. Tamari meets you again, this time holding a small bundle. For you, she says. A personal calendar. Inside is a folded linen cloth, inked with symbols, stars, animals. And a tiny frog with a smug expression. No days, she says. Just reminders. You ask, reminders of what? She shrugs. That time isn't something you follow. It's something you feel. You wake before dawn, or at least, you think you do. The sky is still inky blue, and the stars cling stubbornly to their corners. The air is cool, almost shivering. It smells like dew on stone. Crushed mint, and something vaguely like sesame cakes just beginning to bake. Your blanket of woven papyrus rustles as you shift, and when you sit up, Tamari is already there, waiting, arms folded. Sipping what might be the world's oldest herbal tea. Come on, she whispers. One last thing before you go. You follow her through the half-sleeping streets of ancient Heliopolis. The city of the sun. Buildings blur past like watercolor memories, sandstone temples, bakeries with half-moons of bread set out to rise. An old woman scolding a goose with more authority than most generals. The eastern horizon begins to blush, and Tamari leads you to a flat rooftop overlooking it all. Here, another figure waits, tall. Robed, face mostly in shadow. He carries a staff, not out of need, but out of tradition. He nods at you, slow and deliberate. I thought, Tamari says quietly. You might want to meet the priest who told the king when to sneeze. You blink. I'm sorry. What? The man chuckles. It's true. Back then, kings didn't sneeze without cosmic permission. We told them when to plant crops, start wars, get haircuts, and yes, sneeze. If you knew how badly timed bodily functions could ruin an omen. You can't help but laugh. So you were basically the royal calendar. He tilts his head. More than that. We were the keepers of Mot, order. Cosmic rhythm. The great ticking pulse of time itself. Not just days and months. But balance. You sit down beside him. The stone is cold. Your limbs are heavy in the best way, sleepy, slow, anchored. We watched the stars, he continues. Every night. Especially Sirius. The dog star. When it rose just before the sun, heliacal rising, we knew the Nile would soon flood. That rising marked the Egyptian New Year, more sacred than any resolution. Farmers sharpened tools. Priests prepared rituals. Even cats seemed to strut more confidently. Historians still argue whether the ancient priests predicted floods with true astronomical precision or if they just got lucky with enough data points and poetic timing. But standing here now, you kind of believe them. The air itself seems to hum with expectation. He points east, to a single bright star flirting with the edge of sunrise. There she is. Sopdet. Sothis. Sirius. The Nile's alarm clock. You ask how they kept track, how a civilization thousands of years ago managed to align sky and soil so perfectly. Mathematics, ritual, and patience, he says. And an absurd number of clay pots. He gestures to a jar by his feet. We used water clocks at night. Marked how long it took to drip from one bowl to another. It's not glamorous. But it worked. You imagine ancient priests nodding sagely as pots leak slowly into one another. It feels like the opposite of your modern world, where time moves in streaks and pings. Clocks, he says. Count moments. Calendars remember stories. That phrase sticks. You lean against the parapet, watching the sun begin to pull itself over the desert hills like a very old man rolling out of bed. The light is honey-colored, soft, syrupy. It catches on the golden tips of obelisks, the domes of temples, and the gently swaying tops of palm trees. The priest hums a little tune, maybe ancient. Maybe improvised, and taps his staff once on the stone. This is the moment, he says. This is when it begins. You ask what this is. Everything, he replies. The day. The month. The year. The breath. We mark it, not because we must, but because we can. You look over at Tamari, who has produced a small notebook from somewhere and is doodling what appears to be a combination of a falcon, a sandal, and a question mark. Want to record it? She asks. You shake your head. Not this time. The priest stands, brushing the dust from his robes. So, you've seen it all, haven't you? The months. The gods, the mistakes, the celebrations. The calendar isn't a perfect tool. It's a living compromise. A pact between what we hope the world will do, and what it actually does. You consider that. And the lack of weekends? He chuckles again. We had rest. It just wasn't scheduled. You rested when the stars allowed it. When the temple bell rang. When your wife told you to stop pretending to be busy and fix the roof. He steps back, slowly fading into the stairwell below. As he disappears, Tamari leans in. You know what I think? You raise an eyebrow. I think they could have invented weekends. They just didn't feel the need. Their time was full of pauses already, seasonal, sacred, social. They didn't have to cram rest into a Sunday afternoon and panic about Monday morning. You nod. That tracks. In a strange, calming way. She finishes her tea and sets the cup on the parapet. Come on. Let's walk the long way back. The city is beginning to stir. Roosters crow from rooftops. Merchants yawn over baskets of onions and barley. A boy chases a goat that has clearly committed some unspeakable act of mischief. The world continues, day by day, sun by sun, star by star. And you, floating gently between centuries, smile. The sun is fully up now. But somehow, the warmth feels sleepy, like the world is stretching beneath a linen sheet, not quite ready to begin in earnest. You and Tamari walk quietly through the morning streets, each corner humming with soft, familiar noise. The clink of amphora lids. The swish of brooms on stone. Someone calling for their donkey, who, judging by the lack of urgency, is not particularly interested. You find yourselves back near the temple. The same place you started. A full circle, like any decent calendar. You've seen what we made, Tamari says, leaning against a sun-warmed pillar. And what we didn't. You nod. You made the 365-day calendar. But you didn't give it weekends. She smirks. We didn't forget. We just didn't think you'd need them. You sit down beside her, watching as a group of scribes prepare scrolls for market day, carefully drying ink, sorting through reed pens. Debating whether divine goose feather is a legitimate marketing term. A cat watches them with utter disdain. It's all so calm. That's when it hits you, ancient Egypt wasn't rushing through time. They were living with it. Observing the stars, planting with floods, celebrating the sun, counting days not to dominate them, but to honor their rhythm. A worker passes by, balancing a basket of dates on her head. You ask Tamri how she kept track of the days. Me, she shrugs. I watched my shadow. I listened to the river. I remembered when my grandmother said the sycamore would bloom. And if you missed a meeting, then it probably wasn't that important. There's a lesson in that somewhere. You let it settle. You remember something Encta said. That calendars are how humans put meaning into time. That each number, each month, each strange leap year exists not because the universe demands it, but because we want to feel in step with something bigger. Even if that something is just a cat who stretches every morning at precisely the same sunbeam. Historians still argue whether the Egyptian calendar was the first truly solar calendar. Or whether other cultures, Maya, Persian, even ancient Indian astronomers, arrived at similar conclusions independently. But what's undeniable is the Egyptians' bold simplicity: 12 months. 30 days each, 5 extra ones tacked on like cosmic post-its. No leap years. No nonsense. Just a trust in the cycle. A belief that the Nile would rise. That Sirius would shine. That people would keep living, resting, remembering. The ritual gave time its shape. The shape gave life its rhythm. And rhythm? Rhythm made everything bearable. Tamari rises, brushing dust from her robes. You know, she says, we once debated making every 10th day a rest day. But someone pointed out that nobody would remember which day was 10th. Especially after a few jugs of date wine. You laugh. Besides, she adds, rest is supposed to be something you feel, not something you chase. If you only allow yourself peace once every 7, or 10, days, you're doing it wrong. The scribes begin a new chant, softly calling out the names of the months as they organize records: Thoth, Paopi, Hathor, Koyak. Their voices echo like lullabies in reverse. You ask what happens if the calendar breaks. If people stop believing in it. If the stars vanish behind smog. She doesn't answer right away. Then someone will make a new one. They always do. Time can't be stopped. But it can be reimagined. The sun is high now, warm and sleepy. The city is in motion. And yet it all feels unhurried. Like everyone agreed that time can wait until they're ready. You lie back against the stone, eyelids heavy. Tamri watches you. She smiles. And with a final whisper, sleep well. Time traveler, she's gone. Word count, 1045. Wind down, approximate 300 words. The breeze softens. The sounds of the city blur into one another, a market stall creaking open. A bell chiming somewhere in the distance, and the rhythmic thud of sandals on sandstone. You breathe in, and it smells of old sun and warm honey. You breathe out. And it feels like dust settling in a quiet temple, like a scroll being slowly rolled shut. Your body is still, your thoughts gentle now, like reeds swaying in the Nile's current. All those days, those 365 days, unfold like petals, soft and familiar. Each one part of a rhythm older than kings, older than stories. A rhythm you've been part of, whether you knew it or not. And in that rhythm, there is space for rest. Not the kind squeezed between meetings, or hoarded for weekends, or earned through exhaustion. But the kind that finds you, holds you. Rocks you gently beneath a star-drenched sky. Let it take you. Let the old calendar wrap around you like linen, like time itself yawning into stillness. Let the last candle flicker. The last word fade. You are exactly where you should be. Time can wait. Sweet dreams.